Good morning. We appreciate you coming on our show, Narbe. And I'm not trying to butter you up here, but I was telling Alex, I do think that you probably have the coolest name I've ever heard, Narbe Alexandria. That's a cool name,
It's
man.
funny. I complain to my parents all the time. Any chance I get, I was like, Narbe? You guys think of Narbe? Like that's what it was between Eric and Narbe. And I was like, why would you pick that name? The difficulty of trying to say my name in a room full of a big crowd is like very hard to do because people always butcher it. But I've heard every permutation of it, so I'm cool with that.
I mean, really, it's a cool name. How did they where did that come from? I've never heard of Narbe.
So we lived in Greece, and at the time, like my sister was 5, and I was just born, and my sister was in daycare, and or preschool, and she liked this boy named Narbe, and she told my parents like, let's name the kid Narbe, and they're like between Eric and Narbe, they're like, okay, let's go with Narbe. It's a very unique name, and to
Yeah.
this day, I'm like, unique names don't always work well. I mean, they're memorable once you like build yourself up, but I don't know, when I was in college trying to speak to in a bar trying to speak to a girl, like and trying to say my name in a crowd, it's very hard to get it across and have it pronunciated back to me the way I like it. But so
Hey, and you throw that in with the Alexandrian. Anyways, that's a cool name, man. We appreciate you coming
thanks,
on our
man.
show. What we like to do is we just try to add value for entrepreneurs. We have a real estate company here in Austin, Texas, but Alex and I love the cannabis space. It's super exciting just being entrepreneurs, seeing the future and potential. And if it's cool with you, man, we'd love to kind of go through your background as much as you want to dive in. Really open-ended. We can kind of just go back and forth, but kind of go through the point of to where you got to today. Obviously, now you're running and the CEO of Canopy Rivers, which is a massive company headquartered in Canada, and would love to kind of see, what your path was to get to where you're at today, man.
Yeah. I mean, but before I jump in, I just want to commend you both for everything that you've done up to this point. Like you guys are some of the nicest, most vocal people on social media, and I love the fact that you just give without taking anything back. And I think that's such a strong business point that a lot of young entrepreneurs should always keep in mind because it is really a testament to what the success that you guys have done. So kudos to you both for that.
Man, that really means a lot that you said that. I appreciate that a lot more than because we really do focus on adding value and playing the long game and just kind of seeing how things shake out and leading with that. So thank you for saying that, man. I really appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your question about how I got to be here, I first started off, I graduated from business school. I started off in consulting at M&A at Deloitte, got my CPA through that. Never liked accounting, never wanted to practice it, but just wanted that foundation of understanding financials. Moved out of that, joined the tech startup world with a small tech startup. Uh, then went into the largest government incubator in Canada for technology businesses. Then moved into one of the largest telcos in Canada to head up some of their strategy for the Internet of Things or sensor-based technologies. So I had the software and the hardware side from the startups and the telco that I worked at. And then I took all of that and I started consulting for the UN. So they had a clean tech program that they had worldwide, a venture capital platform. And then took all of that together and then went into Canada's largest venture capital fund, which is OMERS Ventures, Ontario Municipal Employee Retirement System. And they are I think they're about like just under $2 billion of assets under management. They've the big success that the fund had was the investment into Shopify at a very early stage. The company went public at 1.15 billion. Now it's worth about 160, 170 billion dollars. And we were looking at that when it was like 100, 200 million dollars valuation. So huge success there. A number of successes in the tech side. What I was really seeing within the tech side was that there was just a lot of competition coming in to the field. There's a lot of money on the sidelines, and it's all about supply and demand, like any business that's out there, even when you look at the investment business. And if there's a lot of money on the sidelines and there's businesses coming about, these businesses are getting picked up or invested into for larger and larger valuations, even though they might not have gotten that valuation if they were in the field 4 years ago. So the amount of competition that was coming in, I was noticing on the tech side, there was a bit of a adverse selection that was taking place where you had capital, you had to get it into work, and these companies didn't have enough time to scale, but you were just picking them off younger and younger and younger, and you were putting in more dollars because you had to get a good ownership size for that valuation. So saw that happening in the tech space, and then at the same time was talking to Bruce Linton and some of the early founders of Canopy Rivers, and was noticing that the cannabis side had the exact opposite problem. You had companies that couldn't raise capital from institutional investors because that didn't exist at the time when I joined, and they were getting money from angels and high net worth individuals, but they had to promise that they were going to go public in 6 months by doing that. And at the time, the public markets were extremely frothy. That made sense, but some of these entrepreneurs had no idea of what it's like to be a public company and how hard that is and how you have to manage that and how hard it is to bring extra dollars. And if you're still growing, but not necessarily have this mature, scalable unit economics that have taken place. So the idea there was, let's take Canopy Rivers, let's make it into a Silicon Valley type venture capital company, and just really scale it off of that. And we made a number of investments, TerrAscend being one of them that 10x'd us in terms of what we put in. A number of other investments out there that are still pretty young, that are growing. So we've had tremendous success from a venture capital perspective. Some difficulty in taking that venture capital model and putting it into a public company, which you don't see done. I think we're the only company that does that across any space. But to go back to that point, I saw the cannabis industry look a lot like the technology industry back in the early days. Tremendous amount of high exponential growth that's taking place month over month, year over year. This thing is a booming market. At the same time, there's no sense of what works yet because everyone is still trying to figure that out. So in Canada, the flavor of the game when I joined was vertical integration. Now it's like that in the US as well, where you have to own everything. And I know some states force you to do that, and that's completely okay. But some states don't, and companies still go out and cultivate, they extract, they create CPG brands, they're creating medical products, and they're owning the retail. And that looks a lot like the tech industry does in the early 2000s, where you have, if you were to create a real estate e-commerce website where you show real estate, commercial real estate, or real residential real estate, and you want people to buy into it. If this is 2000 and you were trying to build that, you'd have to do everything yourself. You'd own a room full of servers. You have to create the HTML code yourself. You'd have to create like a messaging platform so customers could message and say, I'm interested in this real estate. You have to do everything yourself. But nowadays you don't have that. You have GoDaddy to host your website. You have Shopify to host an e-commerce platform. You have PayPal to do your payment processing. You have Amazon Web Services, so you don't have to take your den and make it into a server room. You have all of that figured out. And now the only thing you have to do is say, I have all these turnkey solutions. I just want to make a real estate website off of it. That's where the cannabis industry is heading to. And that's what our focus of investments have been for quite some time and will be in the near future as well, where we try to find the companies that are doing those 1 to 3 things very, very, very well. And if they have to vertically integrate because they have to, that's fine. But if the rules change and regulations change, can they just figure out what those 1 to 3 things are that they can do really well and outsource the rest of them to someone else? Because cultivation is becoming standardized, extraction is becoming standardized, genetics are becoming standardized, and we're moving into territory similar to the tech industry where you're going to have those best of breed companies that say, all right, you tell me what cannabis you want, I'll grow it for you. But remember that just the bud itself isn't going to sell at the price point you want it to unless you get the packaging and the customer loyalty and the brand affinity all together. And that's where the new wave of cannabis companies is coming.
I love it, man. And it's funny because I've learned from Texas a ton from following businesses. Like I've actually structured deals off of like what Canopy did with Acreage, where you had the option to acquire. And what I'm thinking about, which is really cool with you guys, and I heard someone on your team say this, you're creating an ecosystem where you have little parts of different businesses and you can, exactly what you said, put these together to benefit the big picture. We kind of did the same thing here in Austin. Like we have Alex and I have small parts of we have 30% of a construction company, 30% of a management company. We have a real estate brokerage, a wholesale company. and we're able to put these things together when they specialize on certain values. And that's what I love about Rivers. And obviously, you guys had a massive deal, man, yesterday. And from my understanding, it's $250 to $300 million. And what I really love about what you're doing is it seems like you have very few, if any, competitors in the actual space that you're focusing on. And you have the ability to look at a bunch of pitches from other businesses all the time and get all kinds of insight that maybe even looking at those businesses will help your other businesses. So it's really, really exciting. And anytime you can be doing something that's unique and different, obviously you're setting yourself up to win. But that's how I view Rivers and what you guys are doing. And I can't imagine sitting on that kind of money and having people knock on your door looking for investments. I mean, that's a great spot to be. And that announcement came out yesterday, right? So congrats on that, man. I can only imagine what's next for you guys. I know that you can't really talk about that or even know, but it seems like sky's the limit for Rivers. And so I just wanted to throw that out there because that was massive news. But stepping back a little bit on your career in general, like, were you always kind of business minded? And did you think that you would be a CEO of a company like this? Like, I mean, this seems like you're in a dream situation from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be a CEO of a company. It's like something that I strive to be since I was in high school. I was always a great student, but I drifted through high school, not really caring about what was coming afterwards. And when I was in grade 10, I saw my sister graduate from one of the top business schools in Toronto, Schulich School of Business. And I was at her graduation, and the CEO of CIBC was the keynote speaker, and he was talking through his experience in his life and what he did and what deals he was doing. And I was like, fuck, like, this guy is the man. Like, I want to, like, what is he worth? Like, what is he doing? And I went online and I was like, wow, like he's actually accomplished so much. And now he's at a point in his career where he can give back to the community and do philanthropic stuff. And I was like, I never even thought of business before that. I was just thinking of, like, I don't know what I was going to do. Sciences maybe. And so I kind of tuned into business, and I said, you know what, there's an opportunity here where I always like meeting new people. And I always like just, I call it dialing for dollars, where you just pick up the phone and you just call whoever. So, like, for example, I'll give you an example. Kevin Durant's team is on our advisory board. That was a cold call. And we have folks from tobacco on our board, cold call. I'm a huge proponent of it. I don't know why more people don't do it. Like, I don't know if you're scared of rejection or not, but you call 100 people, and I'm going to guarantee you 5 people at least call you back.
Dude, I want to touch on that real quick, because I literally just posted a video on Instagram, because we're all about that, collecting no's. And Kevin Durant was a cold call. That's amazing, man. But my big theory is, and I tell people, because we have 55 agents on our team, and I say, I really believe anything that you want to do in life, if you go hear the word no 100 times on that specific thing, you will find success. And to hear it from you at a high level, you never stop. You always got to be reaching out, and nobody likes to have that rejection, but you got to almost turn it into a game of collecting no's. And you just reiterated that for me.
The answer's always no, unless you ask.
Yeah. What's the worst? Like, if someone says no to you, like, what's the worst that could happen, right? You just bounce back and you do the next one. And you gamify it for yourself. I don't know how you guys do it, but I always, like, through spreadsheets. I mean, now we have a CRM system, but early on in the days, it was like a spreadsheet. It's like, these are all the people I want to contact, and when did I contact them, and where are we? Should I follow up with them? And you're just telling yourself, like, I want to, like, I have 150 names on this spreadsheet. I want to contact 150 of these names and just see how the funnel plays out. And it's just exciting to see that happen. And when someone comes back and says, I want to do a deal, you're like, okay, I've talked to 20 and one of them wants to do a deal. Imagine what I can do if I went to 200 or 2,000 of these names. And more people don't do that.
Yeah. I when I was in college, I called Warren Buffett's office directly, and I said, hey, can I talk to Mr. Buffett? And she's like, who are you? And I was like, I'm Matt. I'm in college. She's like, sorry, kid. But, just got to get out there, man. I appreciate you saying that. So is that I'm curious, like, with your role and what you do, like, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so the day-to-day does change all the time because you have to consider, like, are you doing financial reporting in a few weeks, or are you going on investment calls, or are you trying to like raise money, and or are you going to board meetings for that week? Because there's certain quarters like where a bunch of board meetings fall into a certain week. So it's a very dynamic time. If I was to generalize it, I take a step back and say, our job is to meet every single company that's out there, public or private, big or small, to try to understand what they're doing. And we've seen over 2,300 businesses up to this point, pitches, like actual pitches of coming to us. We have a database of 4,000 to 4,500 entrepreneurs or operators of companies that are running businesses. And our idea is always like, if you're investing in a space, call it the cosmetic space, and you have this one company in mind that you want to invest in, go talk to every single company that touches cannabis cosmetics, every single one. Call every single one and say, hey, CEO of Canopy Rivers or business development director of Canopy Rivers, whatever it is. And I'm interested in your business. I'm interested in learning more. Can we jump on a quick 15-minute call? 15-minute call. You ask the same questions to every single business to try to understand basically what their secret sauce is, like what makes them so special. You're assessing management at the same time. You're looking at their numbers at the same time. You don't share any of this information ever with the company that you're going to invest into, because that's just completely wrong and your reputation gets ruined. But it's just for you to understand from a diligence perspective, is this the company I should invest into? And sometimes you're right, and that was the company to invest into. And sometimes you're wrong, and you notice that, you know what, there's another company that's out there that's going to kick ass and it's going to do better, and that's the company I should go after. But it all really comes down to like, what's the universe of companies out there and who's being the best one. And if you have a thesis from a macro perspective of, this is the place where I want to go, cosmetics and cannabis, or in my past life, artificial intelligence or quantum computing, and I talk to every single company and I find there's this rock star team and they have rock star idea, and the market's going to become frothy, that it just really puts your entire investment thesis into perspective.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, when you're getting started, obviously Rivers is a big name, and I think it's going to continue to grow. But what are those challenges when they're like, I guess early on, when people maybe didn't have as much respect or know as much, versus now and in the future where, people are a little bit more excited? Like, you're calling people and asking them about their business. I mean, you get a lot of people that are like, no, who are you? And you just have to like press through that and just like, get that first no, but still try to get those answers. Is that some challenges that you faced?
Absolutely. You do get these challenges, especially if you're doing something like dialing Warren Buffett. And there's different permutations of that, of course. And I've always thought, similar to what you guys do, and again, kudos to you on that, is you need to give without asking for anything back. And over time, averages play out and you'll get something back for everything that you're giving. So in instances where it's a very hot CEO or a hot company that is getting a lot of attention, what can I do to be above those guys, like in my competition? What can I do extra? Is it emailing them articles about what's happening in the industry that could help them? That's one step, very easy to do, but that's not going to get you through the door. What can I do more? Can I give them a perspective of where their business is headed, or what the fundraising cycle looks like right now, or who are some good investors to talk to? What those investors, who have they invested into? What are their competition doing? What kind of valuation should they be looking for? Like, and they're not even asking for this information, but because we have access to it, because we've talked to a bunch of companies and we can aggregate that, anonymize it, and give them a perspective of it, you're adding something to it. And I say this, so I missed this in my biography, but I teach at a university on tech entrepreneurship, and I've been teaching for about 10 years. I was the youngest instructor to ever be hired there. And what I tell my students is, don't go into an interview and don't apply to jobs online, and go and do something extra. So when you're going into an interview, don't go just with your resume. Go in with a 5-page report of where you think their business is headed and what changes they should be making, and do like a market sizing of, this is what your products do, this is what competitors do, this is what you should be doing next. 100% of the time, you're going to be absolutely wrong with your suggestion, because you have no fucking clue about the details behind what they're doing and the unit economics, and you're not as vested into that sector as everybody else is, but you're going above and beyond all the other competitors that you have. And that's the same thing on the investment side. You're going in to talk to a hot company, like, what are you giving to them? And you're not asking for anything back. You're not, on your first call, you're not like, I want to invest in your company. On your first call, you're like, I'm interested in your company. I want to learn more. here's some stuff that I can help you with. Do you need connections? Who do you want to talk to? I can get them for you. And if I have to dial for dollars myself to go and find that connection, I'll fucking do it. Like that's what I'll do.
I love it.
And I'll be your conciliary for as long as it takes for me to create this relationship with you. And in the future, if you want to invite me to your fundraising round, perfect. And if you don't, that's fine too, because I'll get the next one. And that's kind of the mindset that you have to build. So Warren Buffett has this quote. I think it's a bit outdated because it's not politically correct anymore, but he says, things take time. You can't have a baby by getting 9 women pregnant. You can't have a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. That's the one. So these things do take time, and you have to invest in the time.
It's all about the long game and continuously providing value.
Yeah. And if somebody did that to us and like had some thoughts on where we could take our business, like we would for sure hire them no matter what. Right. Like, wow, we're impressed. Like we're going to find a role for you, even if we're negative for a little bit, because that's impressive. So that's a good point. And what seems to be, from my perspective, interesting for you is you're really on both sides of this. Like, not only are you outbound calling people, but people are calling you. How hard is it for a company to get in the door at Rivers? And like, I guess things have probably changed a lot with the pandemic and everything, but are people like, doing virtual pitches, and how hard is that for them to get in front of you to show them what they have and to pitch to you?
Yeah, I think just transparently, because that's just the type of guy I am. Within the last 3-4 months, because of some of the stuff that we've been dealing with this announcement that we made, as well as some of the stuff with Farmhouse, we haven't been as active with taking pitches as we used to. But prior to these 3-4 months, so let's say prior to September 2020, we had there's 4 or 5 individuals in our company that were taking 5 to 6 pitches every single day. And anybody who comes in outbound that gives us the information we need, we would jump on a call with them and just hear them out. Like, I'll give you 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. Just walk me through your idea, your business plan, and how I can help. And you just gather that information. And then through those calls of just hearing all these pitches, and in these pitches, people tell you, this is my competitor matrices, and this is where I stand versus some other competitors. And you're like, oh, cool. There's other folks out there that I haven't talked to. Let's reach out to those ones as well. And then likewise, you're also getting their secret sauce. Like, what is it that makes them different? Is it their experience as a management team because they come from executive levels at Starbucks? Or is it the fact that they have a license in hand when in Maryland, when nobody in Maryland is giving out licenses? Like, what is it that makes them so special? And then once you create a thesis of saying that, hey, this company's onto something, this is the geography I want to be in, then you come back to the team and say, this is my idea. And then the team says, you know what, go for it. Go do some work on it and come back. And then you go build out a thesis and say, this is an area that we need to invest in. And then it's like, okay, what's the next step? I need to talk to every single competitor that's out there. Okay, find every single person you can. Use PitchBook, use Crunchbase, use ZoomInfo to get the contact information. Do everything you can, and then come back and tell me the macro environment, the micro environment, competitors, all that put together. Make a memo out of it, and it's usually about 30 pages. And just walk me through your ideas around that, and bring it up to the investment committee, and we'll just beat it out as much as we can, and we'll just hammer out all the confirmation bias that you have of saying that things are good because you're trying to get the best data to present it. We'll hammer out what competitors are doing that we know that you might not know, and let's all agree on this. And sometimes you don't have 100% unanimous agreement, and that's okay. But you have to have enough. And in this business, you need to lose money in order to make sure that you're doing the work right, because it's all about risk and return. And if you're not taking those risks to get that type of return, then you're never going to get a home run like we got on TerrAscend or some of the other deals that we have in our pipeline as well. That's awesome, man. I got a couple questions on that. So, $250 million as of yesterday, maybe 300, I think you said. Did your phone and your emails just start blowing up yesterday? I mean, yeah. How does that work? I mean, obviously now you've got a war chest to go do some deals. And then it's a 2-part question, because I'm a big fan of TerrAscend, and I'm sure you are as well. They're obviously growing. And is that just, something that you look at and say, hey, we've captured a ton of value here with TerrAscend. It doesn't make sense to, ride it out at this point for us based on this deal.
we can go capture more value somewhere else. So kind of two-part question, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So take a step back just to tell the viewers what happened. So yesterday, which is the 21st of December, we announced that we were selling our interest in TerrAscend, Tweedtree, Lot, and Vert Mirabel to Canopy Growth at an implied total transaction value of $297 million. So let's call it $300 million, representing a return on invested capital of 5.6x and an internal rate of return, or IRR, of 101%, which is ridiculous. Right after that, as part of the transaction, we're going to buy back our shares from Canopy Growth, which eliminates the dual class structure because they controlled us and allows us to have more strategic flexibility to work with whomever we want, from licensed producers to multi-state operators. It also allows us to go into the US because of the restrictions that Canopy Growth has through their ownership from Constellation and the exchanges that they sit on. We take this significantly bolstered balance sheet, and then now we have the opportunity to look at investment, acquisition, or merger opportunities, particularly focused in the US, where we couldn't play before because we're listed on the TSX and we had this agreement with Canopy Growth. So it really opened up us to spread our wings and really go after it. Now, your first question was, did my phone go off the hook? Absolutely. As soon as that word came out that we're going to have, call it after we buy out our shares, $250 million of cash, less shares outstanding as well. Of course, people are looking at us being like, fuck, like these guys have money. I need money. Can I go talk to them? So I had people coming out of the woodwork that I haven't talked to for quite some time saying that, hey, it'll been a long time. Let's catch up. Completely fine. I would probably do the same thing myself. I had individuals from the past, CEOs of companies, CEOs of Canopy Growth, reach out and say, great deal. I'm really happy with what you guys did there. We got unanimously positive remarks off of what that took place. It was a lot of hard work, and I for sure am going to say that I was not the one that did this by myself in any sense whatsoever. We have such an all-star team of high caliber individuals. Like, we run this company with 12 people, and we've been doing a great job off of it. And this is a public company as well, so there's a lot of work on the public side of keeping the company public and compliant and having good governance. Your second question was around TerrAscend, and I am a huge fan of TerrAscend from the day I started to I am now, even after this transaction takes place. We hit the gold standard in venture capital of getting to a result where we have an exit that's worth 10 times our initial invested money. So that completely made sense for us. And I say 10 times, I'm rounding up, it's like 9 point something. We have Jason Wild, who's the backer through JW Asset Management and TerrAscend, also a huge investor in Canopy Rivers. He'll own about 24, 25% of the company post closing of this deal. So we have the original brains around TerrAscend and what he did there and who he put into place. And I have huge respect for the management team at TerrAscend now. Jason Ackerman is second to none in terms of the corporate profile or CEO profile that you see in the MSO space. And he's kind of like the first of many strong CEOs that's going to come into the business in the future. And what they're doing there is outstanding. Like they came into the US market in late 2018, and within 2 years, they're one of the top MSOs. And it's not because they just rode the wave and cannabis is expanding. Sure, that's a piece. Macro definitely helps out, but they are executors and they play hard every single day, and they do such a great job. From a ventures perspective, the reason why an exit would make sense is because it is a public entity. So we always get asked, like, what's so special about TerrAscend? I can invest in TerrAscend myself. Like, it's not a deal that you're bringing to the table that I can't see as well. So you kind of want to move away from public equities and focus on the private side.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm so curious because, and I'd love to dive into Texas and like your opinions for us trying to get in this space. But from the outskirts, like, it's hard, being here in Texas because we're so far behind on this. Like, I always try to think, what are these big businesses doing? What are the next mergers and big moves? And after they happen, it always makes a lot of sense in some ways. But I'm curious, like with Aphria and Tilray, and there was a big deal that I'm sure you saw with Liberty today. How long, and your deal, like, how long do these things take place? Because anytime Alex and I are doing a deal like a partnership or a merger, it's 4, 5, 6 months. Is that a fair assumption that that's how long it takes for these deals to happen? Like the deal that you just closed, was this been in the works for a long time? And how you feel about Aphria and like Tilray, just I guess assuming how those things play out?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, it does take 5 to 6 months from the first time an idea is originated and communicated to the other party till it actually happens and takes place. And a lot of the work happens in the last 2 months where the lawyers and accountants and tax advisors, et cetera, just really dive in and say, like, let's dice this up and make sure all the details are ironed out. Before that, it's much of a business conversation of saying, does this make sense for both sides? And a lot of deals die in those last 2 months because the details don't work out, but at a high level would have worked out. With the Aphria and Tilray, it does make sense. I mean, Aphria has done a great job of building a business. They have outstanding market share in Canada. Together, they're going to have the most market share in Canada, and you're going to see consolidation take place in Canada, where federal legalization means like companies in any province can really merge with one another. So we think that it's kind of like the first wave of consolidation that's going to happen. I do think the U.S. is in dire need of consolidation, but you can't do that because the states can't really talk to one another. In terms of if the deal was good or not, I think it was really positive for both Tilray and Aphria shareholders. Like you basically catapult yourself to number one position. You put a bunch of cash on there. Tilray has some great assets internationally for cultivation in areas like Portugal and other parts of Europe. Aphria does a great job domestically in terms of market share and what they do. Tilray has some great brands as well, but they need production capabilities that Aphria can give them. The whole thing really just does make sense. So we're really happy with how that progressed. And I kind of thought that the media could have picked up on it a bit more. Like if this was 2018, 2019, like every sneeze would have been like a huge spectacle from a media perspective. And this was a really big deal, which had a lot of implications to it that I thought could have been picked up a bit more.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And so to my next question, and Alex, I'll let you jump in because I get so excited about this because I do care about this space. How can, we're in Texas. I really want to get involved in the space, but I want to be in Texas. We have roots here, connections here, which I know will be valuable in the long run at some level for cannabis. What's your advice for people like us? Other than what I kind of already know, just keep adding value, keep playing the long game. And how do you think about Texas and like, what could we be doing? Because all I've known is I can invest in these public companies. There's 3 licensed people here in Texas that value themselves the way that, some of these other massive companies do. And, they're losing tons of money. And they're like, well, there's only 3 licenses in Texas. So, this is going to be super valuable, which I know that more licenses will come with time. But what would be your advice for us that care about this space? Like, how can we be thinking about things, with a 5, 10, 15-year mindset to position ourselves well to somehow be a part of this space?
Yeah. First off, I love the fact that you said 5, 10, 15 years, because a lot of people ask that same question, say, how can I make money in 6 months? How can I double my money in 6 months? And it is a long game that you have to play. I think Texas is in a very special circumstance where we talked to a lot of growers and pure cultivators, like those greenhouse, like I've done vegetables, I've built billion-dollar businesses. Now I'm trying to get into it. And now I have a cannabis business. And they look at Texas and say, agriculturally, this is the place to grow. If we were allowed to do that, because of the climate, the amount of sunshine you get, the dryness of it. It's for a greenhouse operator, like it's going to be in Texas, and we're going to grow so much of it in Texas because land is also cheaper, and we're going to push it out to the rest of the U.S. upon federal legalization. And that's the view. So I have no doubt that Texas is going to become one of those big states where it is a big state, but one of those important states where a lot of the cultivation and the core production is going to take place. And because of that, so what's going to happen there, you're going to see a lot of brands get developed there as well. So I think it's a perfect storm for investment down the road. I think what we have to look at, and a good friend of mine who's made a killing in the tech sector, came to the cannabis sector, made a killing as well, and recently was one of the main investors in Weedmaps that went public at $1.5 billion. When I asked him, like, how did you jump from the tech industry to, and he likes to go below the radar, so I can't say his name, but how did you go from the tech industry to the cannabis industry? His one answer was, I was just looking at the polls. And I looked at the polls, and the polls showed me that a lot of Americans wanted to legalize cannabis back in 2013. And based on that, I said, you know what, this is a sector to go into. What do the people want? So in your scenario, when you're in Texas, and Texas is a very Republican state outside of where you guys are at right now, you got to look at it and say, like, do the people want legalization to take place? And as you see that bar creeping up, because the rest of the U.S. is slowly legalizing towards rec, you have to ask yourself, it's inevitable. It's not an if, it's a when will Texas legalize for medical use or recreational or adult use as well. And that like, in having that macro site out there, it's a no-brainer that you want to invest. Then it becomes a question of, when do you want to invest? And for a lot of Canadian investors that made a killing off of Canada, it was as soon as the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, got elected, he stood up and said, now I'm Prime Minister. And we knew that legalization was in his mind. We didn't know how serious it was. Similar to that, we don't know how serious Biden and Harris are, but we knew that was in their mind. And a lot of people made those bets. It's a risk and return that you're making. So you have the headwinds of the federal election behind you. This Georgia runoff is going to be very important as well to tell you who's going to control the Senate. And then on top of that, you look at Texas and you say, okay, what do the people want? When is that going to take place? Put that all together and create a thesis and say, this is the time to go after those 3 medical licenses that exist right now and put some money into it. And that might not make me too much money because I'm going to be a late investor, et cetera, but that's going to be the one I use to get the next 3 licenses, because I'll say I'm an early investor in that one, and that one turned out to be well, and now there's more licenses, and the whole snowball effect really takes shape.
Yeah. And, I'm always really passionate and felt led to politics in some ways. And I'm thinking about running for city council here in Round Rock, where we're just north of Austin. And it's interesting because I've talked to a lot of people, and like, Round Rock's a great place. Like, it's very safe. It's got, good businesses, and it's a great place to live, great schools. And I'm like, the one thing, if I had to pick out what I'd be passionate about, would be talk about cannabis. And I could debate it and argue it for hours and hours why I think it should be legal. And I'm trying to understand if, like, at a city council level, that makes sense. Like, I know I can't make much change, but I believe in it. And maybe you can make change by just talking about it. So that's just something that's on my radar, literally, like, in a month, maybe filing to run. And whether I lose or not, it's not important, but getting a message out would be pretty cool from that perspective.
Do it, man. You miss the 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
I love
That's
it.
right. Do it. I've been telling him, just go for it.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a question just about Canopy Rivers, mindset and kind of your viewpoint on the businesses that y'all are investing in. Talking about the businesses that specialize in those 1 to 3 things, and they're very good at those things. I guess really my first question actually is, why do you think that you're talking about vertical integration? Why do you think that some states require that? And that's kind of the current mindset there.
Yeah, it's that one throat to choke mentality where they won't, because they're legalizing it and you're going from an illicit market to a legal market. You don't want any slippage between the two. So you want to make sure that legal companies are completely legal and you can see everything that's going on. And that first step is to really rein control of everything that company is doing. So that every person that walks in there walks out. There's no product that can leave because it all has to stay there. All has to be tagged. All has to go to the same supply chain all the way to the end consumer. And it's much easier for a government that legalizes initially to say, this is how I can control the industry at this point in time. And then the one step even worse than that would be if the government said, I'm going to control the entire industry in that state, because they don't want private companies to go and take that and mix it with the illicit market. But we're not there. We're at least like one level down. And then as the government gets used to it, says, I have the control mechanisms to make sure that if anybody slips, this is what happens. I've given fines to a company, so people are now scared of getting a $250,000 fine if they screw up or getting their licenses taken away. then the government can say I can back off slowly, take those training wheels off, and really let the company do what they want to do. So it's all we've seen this in so many different geographies happen over and over again. New geographies are always vertically integrated, or most of the time vertically integrated, and then they slowly start to specialize and do what they do best. And if you think of the long run, this is going to look like a consumer packaged goods or CPG industry, similar to what you see with Procter & Gamble and Unilever. They don't create the product themselves. They subcontract it from a manufacturer. What their business is sales and marketing. That's what the money goes into to make sure that they can get into the minds of consumers. So when you think of toothpaste, you think of Crest, or you think of Colgate, and that's what their job is. And that's where the cannabis industry is going to go down that path. And might take 2 years, might take 5 years, might take 15 years, might take 20 years. But it's happened in liquor, it's happened in pharmaceuticals, it's happened in CPG, and it's going to happen in cannabis. It's inevitable.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. What's so fascinating about this space is it's inevitable that it's coming. It's just a matter of time. And this is just kind of me talking out loud. Like, one of my biggest challenges investing in the space is there's been these crazy ups and downs. And I've never really wanted to be a swing trader. Not that I have anything against that, but I always wanted to just ride it out for what I said, the 20-year mindset. And it's been hard sometimes, because I keep buying, and sometimes I bought at the top, and it's just really fascinating because, and I think we're lucky. Like, I was talking to a guy yesterday, he's 60 years old, and like, he was told it would never happen in his lifetime, legalization. And, a lot of people had that, where they were really passionate and cared about this product and what it could do, but nothing was ever going to change. It feels like, to me, it's extremely obvious that it's going to in our lifetime. And it's just, now we're just kind of waiting. Like, the momentum is there. I mean, do you see yourself, I know you're pretty entrepreneurial, like, it seems to be a ton of runway here. Like, you see yourself being in this position for a long, long time, and like, sky's the limit on what Rivers can accomplish and what you can look at? Or do you see like things happening pretty quick and people like moving on to other industries? Because I'm just curious, like how people in your shoes kind of view that long-term mindset.
Yeah, it's a great question. I get asked that all the time. My perspective has been that this is a very early days within the industry. And it's some days it sucks because you see the roller coaster ride of decisions that you made in the past come to haunt you because the industry evolves in a certain way that you weren't anticipating. And that's just being completely real about it. It is a risk and reward game in my role as a venture investor. So that's that piece. But if you take a step back and you look at folks in the alcohol industry or pharmaceutical industry, and you say, like, who are the ones that are really leading? That CEO that comes out and says, I have 30 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, or the CEO or the COO or someone from the alcohol industry that says, I got in here when I was in college and now I'm COO of the company. I've been here for 35 years. We don't have anybody in cannabis that can say I've been here for 10 years. And if they have, they've been in the illicit market, switched over to the legal market, and have been going. Which kind of like draw the line at the legal market, because that's when you actually start becoming accountable for everything. So if you take it from that mindset and you stick to this industry for quite some time, in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, you'll be one of the only people left, because people are older and they'll probably retire. And you guys seem like young guys that can say, I have 15, 20 years of legal cannabis industry experience behind me. And that's a really powerful message, because the more things you see during that period of time, the more you see than anybody else coming into the industry for the first time. So that there's definitely a benefit of playing that long game and sticking to that industry going forward. And that's kind of how I see the cannabis industry, because it's still in its nascency. And a lot of we've seen so much turnover already in the past year of executives moving away and saying, I don't want to be part of this industry anymore. Those who stick around are getting way more learning than anybody else. That's
great. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it is the long play, and it is in its infancy stages. And I mean, it's here and it's happening. And, like you said, to come in with the presence and be here for the long game is definitely the right mindset to have. With Canopy Rivers, companies and ideas and businesses that you're looking into, I'm curious to know if there is maybe a new concept or a new business or a new way of doing things, like you were talking about, like with AWS Amazon warehouses. Is there a new business or idea or concept out there that you are fascinated with in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, so the two areas that I'm extremely fascinated in that I just don't think get enough light is plant science and biosynthetics. So biosynthetics is a long word, but it's easier to explain because it's one concept, and that's the idea that not all cannabis should be grown through the plant. I'll give you an example. Aspirin, it comes from the bark of a willow tree. You don't see any willow tree cultivation facilities. Nobody's growing trees en masse to like extract the proteins or whatever it is. I'm not a scientist to make aspirin out of it. Instead, they know what that is that the willow tree creates, and they can create it in the lab through biosynthetics. And biosynthetics is you're programming a biological organism, yeast, bacteria, to go and create that that product. So in this case, would be cannabinoids, CBD, CBG, THC, and then once it creates it, you can use a solvent to just use something else to clean out the rest of the material, and all you're left is with pure THC or pure CBD. That's the future of the cannabis industry in some remarks. I'll caveat that by saying, because like they call cannabis a weed for a reason, because it can grow really fast, and this is why the hemp industry is very interesting, because you can use it to replace paper, replace plastic products, concrete, etc. When you look at the cannabis industry, THC and CBD, in my perspective, and this is my own personal perspective, is going to be created through the plant itself. Because the other 98 plus cannabinoids that we don't really talk too much about, that the plant doesn't readily produce as much of, that have so many cool anecdotal things that we're seeing from a medical perspective. THCV, that suppresses appetite, THC, which increases appetite, excuse me, that's going to be more so coming out of the lab. And who's going to create that? And who's going to be the first one to create that? Who can patent that as well? That entire process to say, this is mine and I can create the final product. That's going to be very important, because it's going to lead us to a sustainable product that we can use in CPG products in the future. Not dry flower, because that's its own niche that people are going to take.
Right. And what was the other one that you said you were very interested in?
Plant science. So you look at industries like vegetables, corn, soy, tomatoes, and the genetics of those plants have been worked on and engineered for decades and decades and decades. And even organically, they have as well. I'm not talking about genetically modifying anything, and I'll put that aside because that's not allowed. But just engineering the seed and the trait to make sure that it's better against pests, it's better against mold, it can grow faster, it can grow stronger, it develops more oil. These are things that the Monsantos and the Dow DuPont Pioneer or Corteva or the Syngenta, these are what the companies are creating for the vegetable sector. And they're slowly just coming into the cannabis sector. So up to this point, even though we've been legalized in Canada for 2 years and the US is where it's at right now, the genetics that a lot of these companies are building off of, like they're doing these old school methods of breeding programs to get those genetics out, but they haven't seen like that entry from big ag really come into cannabis and say, I'll create the genetics for you, just grow it. And you see this on the tobacco side. You grow tobacco in South Africa or Northern Africa, or you grow it in the US, your Marlboros are going to taste the same no matter where you get it from. It's like the Big Mac effect. And that same thing has to come to the cannabis industry down the road. And I don't think enough people are looking at the plant sciences sector as viable investment options, because they're really focusing on the downstream piece too much.
Do you so the plant scientists, when they come in and they create these genetics, do they technically own those genetics and then license out the genetics to growers and to manufacturers?
So the cannabis industry, you don't see too much IP around genetics itself. I think Charlotte's Web is one of the only ones that really came out and patented that genetic, and it wasn't. It was more of a marketing play than it was an actual patent. Because if you do something slightly different, you can say, I'm not impeding on that patent.
Right.
But on the vegetable side, you do see patented breeds. So you see seeds where you can dive into it and then you can come back out and take it to court and say, no matter what you do, like I own this DNA that's behind it. And we're going to get to that someday. And that's kind of like that 10 to 15 year time frame. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, you got to let science have time to do their work, right? I mean, like you said, it's been 2 years in Canada, and I'm sure there's a ton of new innovation just waiting for the opportunity to start researching.
Which is exciting for all of us that are interested in the cannabis industry and interested in investing in it.
Okay, well, we'll get you out here in a second because I know you got some money to go invest and people blowing you up. And hopefully I can ask this question, but do you partake in the cannabis yourself?
Yeah, you got to eat the dog food, right? That's what I always say, to understand what the differences are, the different form factors are. So you can quickly tell who doesn't and who does just by the way they don't understand the differences between vaporizing dry flower or using a vape pen or a vape cartridge because they just think vape is vape. But you do have to try it out. There's certain forms that I prefer more than other ones, but I am always open to testing out new form factors to see what the buzz is about.
I dream of the beverages, man, because we can't get that here. What are the beverages like?
They're awesome. So kudos to Canopy Growth for what they've built on the beverage side, because they did have a lot of naysayers that don't. It's weird because the naysayers never come out and say I was wrong, but there were a lot of them that are out there. These beverages, no calories, no sugars, completely clean. They kick in just as fast as a beer does. They kick out pretty quickly as well. Maybe not as fast as a beer does, but close to there as well. You can see a world where you go to a liquor store and you buy 4 of these 24 packs. So we call them 2-4s in Canada, a 24 pack of them, and then bring them home. And it's a guilt-free way to enjoy a vice, unlike alcohol. And this is why I think a lot of the alcohol companies are like, oh shit, like I need to get into this sector because I understand beverages and this is something that I need to invest into. It is a game changer. And I've seen people that have never tried cannabis before or weren't really big on smoking cannabis coming into the field, and they have like they're taking pictures and sending them to me of like a giant like Egyptian pyramid of cannabis drinks that they bought for the holidays, saying that I'm in COVID, I'm gonna stay home, I got everything I need, don't need anything else. So once this entire pandemic mess is over, I'd love for you guys to come to Toronto. We can do a bit of a taste test together and try them out and see where that goes.
That'd be amazing, man. I'm dreaming of having one of these pyramids one day. Well, thanks, man. Last question for you, because we do have, it is real estate somewhat, but business entrepreneurs. Like, if you could think of maybe a couple things, like what would you give advice for young entrepreneurs, young business people? For any, I guess it can apply to any aspect of what sector you're in, but what are some things that are important to you that you would find valuable to younger people that are trying to get into business?
Yeah, I think the number one message I like to give my students when I teach them is the snowball effect. And you look at a guy like LeBron James and you're like, I'll never be that type of basketball player. And most people won't because he's gifted with genetics. But there's a lot of hard work that goes behind the scenes that nobody understands. And Michael Jordan was cut from their basketball team once upon a time when he was in high school, and he used that as like drive to become better. So have a goal in mind, understand that it's not going to get done in a single day. This world is about incremental change, not radical change. You see it in social justice, you see it in so many different aspects, rights movements, like it takes years to develop that. Same way you have to think of it yourself, like you're in it for the long haul. What can I do every day to get better and better at my craft and enjoy it more and more and more and get myself to that goal? And if you set that in mind and you have that long-term perspective of, I'm just going to chip away at this until I get there, you're going to eventually get there. And the people who don't have that mindset are the ones that are just at the starting line every single day, every single year, and they just don't go forward because they're just scared of that process and that hard work that needs to take place. So just embrace that, gamify it as much as you can, because that's the way you really make it fun for yourself. And if that means you buy a tool or software to do your CRM for you because you want to find a way to give yourself like a bit of more incentive to move forward, do it, and just get yourself in that rhythm, and it just becomes so fucking fun after that. And you just love to wake up every day and just chip at something.
I love it, man. Well, we appreciate that a lot. We're extremely excited. I'm going to go buy some more shares. I can't wait to see what you guys do. And we want to try and figure out how to keep adding value. We'll promote this, and we're here in Texas, but man, just loving what you're doing from afar. So congrats on the deal. Thank you very much for your time. Your time is very valuable, so it does mean a lot to us, and we really, really appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. One last thing real quick. Is there anything that our viewers or ourselves can do to add value for you or Canopy Rivers?
Yeah, go on her website, www.canopyrivers.com. Check out our landing page, our portfolio. If you think it's the right investment for you, make that investment. Like, we're looking at disruptive businesses all across the world now, particularly in Canada and the US, more so in the US right now. And we think it's such an early stage right now. Like, don't look at what the stock market tells you about what companies are trading at, because the Ubers and the Facebooks, the companies that didn't exist in the .com bubble and burst that came around after, now are worth, Facebook's worth trillions of dollars. These are the businesses that still might come in the cannabis industry, and that's what you're betting on. So keep your eyes open and look for that, and we're going to be doing the same. So if you want to invest through us, stock symbol is RIV on the TSX.
Awesome. Thank
Love
you.
it, man. Thanks.
We really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. It's an honor to have the guy with the best name in the world on our podcast.
And $250 million in the bank. Let's go, baby. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.